even if government wants to do, will not be able to, do them. And for example, you said that a mid-year budget review can either introduce new taxes or do away with some taxes and levies. Now, before the presentation of this mid-year budget review yesterday by the finance minister, many people were expectant and hoping, that some taxes will be done away. In fact, if you listen to the minority in parliament, they themselves touched on a few of the taxes that they were thinking, that they ought to go. The business community themselves were also expecting that some of the taxes or and levies that we have would go away. Would you say that it was a wrong, thought, wrong, perception, wrong desire, wrong wish?
Okay, I wouldn't say so. As for us in the country as citizens and as business-going concerns, we will be happy that there are lower taxes that have been put in place for us to pay. For instance, if I buy a commodity with that tax, I will be more happier than paying for a tax. But then we call certain taxes like the COVID-19 levy at the airport and on tourist areas as one of the nuisance taxes that must be removed. According to all businesses within those sectors and even general public that we buy goods and services because it affects the prices that we pay. Because of the IMF situation, one of the key instruments in the IMF thing is for us to show up revenue mobilization. And for you to do that, it will be difficult at this juncture to remove taxes. Albeit these taxes may be affecting certain quarters of the nation, especially the businesses in the tourism and hospitality area in particular. And so government, therefore, would need to do what we call a balancing act. Whilst the taxes remain, it has to put in what we call structural reform or policies, which the government try to put some of them or rehash some of them in the budget.
Like which ones?
For instance, knowing that the tax burden and the tax will burden businesses and also stifle their growth, government prepares something like the financial sector, and put in some things like flexible facilities. As to whether the businesses have access to them is another thing we can discuss another day. Two, it has something like the goal that is growth opportunities for SMEs, which also give facilities to SMEs in those sectors. In fact, in those sectors, there are more SMEs even than bigger or larger industries to be able to also have flexible access to finance. And so some of these things are structural and they are supposed to lessen the burden of these businesses when it comes to access to finance and even reduce the cost of borrowing and also the potential of what we call delinquency, that is not paying their loans. Aside that, if these businesses are able to access these kind of sources, then it means that there could be an opportunity also expand employment. When we talk about these things, sometimes it is not immediate, especially now that we have election. There will be more noise on any government in power to more or less conjure something. But we have been living in the country for the past, let's say even for this constitution for the past 30 years and for this government for almost 8 years. So if something did not happen earlier, when you don't expect it to happen on the day the budget is read.
But Prof, if you recall, the finance minister in his presentation yesterday admits that we are in difficult times.
Yes.
This is not the first time we're hearing this. In fact, the vice president has said it, the president himself has said it, that we're in difficult times. Along the line, Kendo Ferreira told us that we've turned the curve. I ask myself, if you admit this and you say you empathize with the Ghanaian, shouldn't you have put in some measures to give the Ghanaian some relief, the individual Ghanaian, not the businesses per se, give the individual some relief?
In fact, you are right. You see, but once again, that's why I was talking about the balancing act. What kind of relief? That is what will only come through structural policies. And in a nutshell, probably I am beginning to think that this being a mid-year budget review and the sentiment that is actually following it, and because of the election, the budget that will be read in November, if there will be one, I don't know whether in election year we read budget before the government goes out. We'll have to immediately deal with something like this COVID-19 thing, unless it is one of the strict requirements in the IMF thing. Believe me or not, this IMF thing is looking at stability and bringing the economy back on track. And the first effect we will have is we who are in the country. Like President Kufuor's time, he said, Yembo belt.
Tighten your seatbelt by the bullet. We've heard all those
before, yeah, because in economics we have something that we call the JK effects. Normally you go down before you rise. In situation like this, before we say the economy is back on its footing, we got to suffer. We have to suffer.
But we've been suffering for so long. Now, again,
and that is the interesting thing.
When we talk about some of these taxes that must go away, unfortunately, it has not gone away. Maybe because of the hand of the IMF. But with all these taxes, we hear that it's driving other businesses away from Ghana. That people are relocating to our neighboring countries to do businesses there. That will bring about more unemployment. That will bring about more challenges for our economy. So why don't we consider these things for the larger good or for the greater good?
You see, like one economist said, at this point, the private sector in particular will suffer a bit, to be honest, because most of the program, as you can see, for instance, credit to private sector has declined. Even though interest rate, government own rate is coming down, the fight for that is to bring down inflation. So some of these things will affect the private sector, honestly, because government will tend to compete with the private sector. Look, right now, what is government really depending on to spend on in this country is T-bill. T-bill is an area that is sensitive, that should have been left mostly to private business. That is, instead of government borrowing, so everybody will want a dedicated person who might pay their loans. Or what they lend to them. And government, especially when it comes to T-bill, is an area that is assured. So instead of lending to private sector, now government mops up almost everything.
No, but again,
and